Welcome, everybody, to this episode of Breaking Absolutes. I'm really excited today to get to talk to Gus G. I think a lot of you will be very familiar with Gus from a whole host of different projects and bands that he's participated in. We won't have time to touch on all of it, which says something about the sort of versatility of his career, but we are definitely going to talk about a lot of it. Before we get rolling there, just a reminder, if you dig what we do, the kind of guests we get like Gus here today, consider subscribing or following the channel. It helps us sort of maintain the momentum we need to do what this show does, which is to try and talk to artists that we think are at the forefront of moving the genre forward, whose work deserves a broader audience, and our efforts to try and make sure that happens. So let me say a little bit about Gus. I'll see if I can embarrass him before I bring him on to talk to everybody. He's done an amazing number of solo albums. He's got some forthcoming work we're going to talk about. He's got his own band that he founded and is the sort of catalyst for all the writing and really the figurehead there, which is Firewind. They've got 10 studio albums by my count, plus a live album. So we'll talk about that. He's played in a number of really significant bands, and one of the things I'll hope to talk to him about is the way that some of these bands have a unique sound, and I think that it says something about Gus's playing that he can move with such facility between these different sounds in a very authentic way, where I think a lot of guitarists can emulate, and I personally draw a distinction between sort of an authentic representation of the genre of metal and a sort of emulation of it. And that sounds like an esoteric argument, but I think it's something that's audible. So we'll talk a little bit about Gus's versatility there. We'll talk about his time with Ozzy, of course, and we'll spend a bunch of time on some of his other creative endeavors. He's also an entrepreneur. The man's got some of his own gear line that we want to be sure we talk about. So with that as kind of a setup, let me bring Gus on and we'll just get going on our conversation. Gus, welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, man. So grateful you could join us today.
Thank you for having me, man. Thank you. Good to talk to you. Good to be here.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, we were talking right before we came on, and this is kind of how I like to get rolling on this. You've been busy during COVID. It seems like despite all of the negatives, you've turned it into a way to actually keep busy. Has that been your experience during this time, this pandemic?
In the beginning, yeah, I guess everybody was like that. They were all excited since all their tours got canceled. All the musicians, they were like, screw it, we're making a new record. So everybody did a new record, and
yeah,
that's kind of what I did as well. Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I did as well. Oh, you see a cat back there?
Yeah, we saw your cat.
Yeah, it's one of my cats. Yeah, they come in here. But yeah, so I did a record last year. I mean, I recorded and composed and recorded and got everything ready, and now it's ready to be released. We've just put out a couple of singles so far, but I'll say this, that during this pandemic, yeah, I've kept pretty busy, but not every day is the same. It's like like everybody else, like all people, I've have ups and downs, and there's been a few weeks where I was like, well, I don't want to do anything anymore ever again. It's like, because there's all this uncertainty about the future.
Yeah.
And so there's moments where you're feeling low, and then you get motivated again. And I'm trying to think, like, where does this come from? But I guess it's something that just comes and goes. And but I've been trying to stay busy. I've been trying to stay creative as much as possible.
Yeah.
Without really having the live shows in my life anymore.
Yeah, it's I hear this is very similar to what I hear from a lot of musicians. There's some time to reconnect with things you don't have time for, and time to get to projects. It's cool that you've done some recording, because the album you reference, I've listened to the first initial tracks, and I want to talk about those a little bit later. But they're really good, and I want to get your your thoughts on some of that, what you've done there, which I think is really distinctive. But let's go back. Let's kind of start at the beginning. This is another thing we talked about just prior to coming on, but you are from Thessaloniki, Greece.
Yeah.
And I've been there. That's
Yeah.
the craziest thing. I was with a band shortly, fronting a band called Heir Apparent, did a bunch of shows in Europe, and I'd never heard of it. And when I read that you're from there, I was like, there's just no way. I can't be the same town. But
it's a small world, man. It's a small world.
It's there's must be something in the water there for rock and metal guys.
Well, there's there's lots of people here that love heavy metal. And it's it's got a loyal, as you probably remember when you were here, fans are very loyal, and they're really like the ones that are really follow the bands there, like they grow up with the bands. It's like a it's a kind of thing that follows them for life. And they're very passionate at the gigs, and some of our most epic shows ever have been here in our hometown, and generally in our country, in Greece.
Yeah.
And I mean, and all other musicians that I've met that told me, I've been in Greece, everybody always kind of says the similar things. First of all, how great the food is, and secondly, like how passionate the fans are here.
It is true. There's something unique about Greek metal fandom. It's both broad, meaning more, but there's a loyalty there. It's in the States. I would argue that music tastes are far more transient. It's people go with whatever's trendy. It's not like that. I would say Europe generally is better, and Greece is one of the countries there where that's absolutely true. And so
it kind of makes sense, though, doesn't it? I mean, America is such a big country. Like everything is happening there. Like the center of all entertainment is in America. You have Hollywood, you have Vegas. Like so much stuff is happening, and people like I can see why people kind of like follow different things, and new things are starting out of America, and are being built in America, and all those things, and but there's still there's a lot I've noticed, because I've toured America numerous times, and there are lots of loyal metal fans there as well.
For sure.
Yeah, it's a smaller kind of circle, smaller kind of thing, but still that's what you want. I mean, I think if you're into this kind of music, it's it's a part of a lifestyle, I guess. So you kind of you live your life that way, and you support the bands you love, and whenever you have the chance to see them, you see them, or you either that or you travel. I mean, we meet fans that travel all over the world to see us.
Well, one of the things that I guess maybe I'm romanticizing it, but one of the things I love about Europe is there is such a robust metal festival season all summer long. Like you can go to a festival every week if you're willing to just do a little bit of travel around Europe, which is so easy to do by train. Someday, like I'm going to spend my summer there, and I'll be in Greece, and be in Germany, and all the places.
You should do it.
Wacken. I've never been to Wacken.
Oh man, you should go there. It's amazing.
Yeah. Tell me, what you play there, or have you just been as a fan, or both?
I've been there a few times. The first time I played there was 2002. I was very young then. I was with this band from Sweden I used to play called Dream Evil.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that.
Right. So we had just done our first album, and it was like, it was picking up. It was making some noise, around the world, and we got invited to Wacken right away, into a few other big festivals. And Wacken, mind you, was not as big. It was nothing like what right now. Like today, it's like 100,000 people go there. Back then, it was a smaller festival. It was like maybe 20, 25,000.
Yeah.
And that was the first time. Then I went back there a couple of years later with a band called Mystic Prophecy. I was a member of that band for a while. Did a few records with them. And then I played. Then the next time I went back was in 2011, where I headlined it, playing with Ozzy.
Yeah, dude.
Which it was like beyond my wildest dreams, yeah. And then I went back one more time a couple of years ago. We played with Firewind for the first time, and I was always wondering, like, why didn't Firewind ever play here? Like, why did it take us like 20 years to come here? But we did it, yeah, and it was great.
You've had you've had this happen before where with Firewind, the way I read your backstory a little bit, where it was always something you wanted to do, but then you ended up having these opportunities that created detours for you. And I want to talk about that. But before we even get there, like the way this all started for you, if I read this right, is you heard Peter Frampton. So Peter Frampton, he was the early guy that got you like passionate about guitar.
Correct. Yeah.
And then your dad bought you an acoustic first, actually, though. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a classical guitar, like a nylon string classical guitar, which I still have to this day, but I hated it, because I wanted an electric guitar and an amp.
Yeah.
I wanted to play with distortion.
But that happened, and obviously you got later down the road and began to play. And you came as a very young person. I don't know, you're 18 or something. You came to the States to attend Berklee. And like other very famous guitarists, only stayed there a little while. Like another famous guitarist that I love is John Petrucci, and he was at Berklee, and he was only there a little bit, and then he left, and he just immediately began to actually pursue doing the music. Not, is that so? Your experience, you were there for just a short time.
Yeah, just for a few weeks, really. And I come from a working class family. We really couldn't afford to. My parents would have never been able to afford to put me in college for 4 years. We could only afford like the first year, and I had a scholarship as well, so it was kind of like a little bit of a discount. So I was like, okay, let's go there for a year and see what happens and see if I can pull it off. And I quickly realized that okay, this isn't for me. And but even back then, it was like you mentioned Petrucci, and guys like him and Steve Vai. They made that school famous amongst metalheads and rock guitar players. So you would see a lot of kids from all over the world going there because those guys went there, and just kind of hoping that maybe they could form a band there, or at least that's what was in my head at the time. Like, okay, maybe I will meet some other kids and we can form a band. And I don't know what I was thinking. I was 18.
Oh, that's actually everything you said there is really smart. Someone with the dedication to their craft to want to spend time, first place, people at Berklee are usually pretty skilled players, and everything you said there makes sense. But you actually started to have some success. You came out of there. What I read is you recorded a demo, but and there was some excitement for it, but before you could really pursue it, you began to get pulled into other bands that actually had some success, and you named a couple of them. I wanted to ask you about it. You go ahead.
It was an interesting story. Like I had started my vision was always to name this band called Firewind, and try to find the members and make records, and I would just send my demos to labels. And I mean, it didn't happen overnight. Like the first 3 years was just like getting rejection letters from labels. I've been rejected from pretty much every metal label that's out there, or that was out there at that time. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Which probably means my stuff wasn't good enough at that time. So, but I was also open to collaborating with other people. And then I ended up in Sweden a few months later after leaving Berklee. And like I was like, well, you know what, I'll start a bunch of projects, or whoever wants to have me, whoever wants to collaborate with me, I'll just start writing with them, because I needed to develop my songwriting skills as well, not only my guitar playing skills. And so I started writing with other people, and the next project that I was involved was with this producer in Sweden, Fredrik Nordstrom, who owned like a famous studio for heavy metal bands. That he did production for bands like In Flames and Hammerfall and bands like that. And the Gothenburg scene was exploding at the time. That's like late 90s. So anyways, we started a band together, and that was basically Dream Evil. And then I was writing with some other guys in Germany. I was sending my demos back and forth to whoever, man, like magazines, labels, other musicians. And So I ended up writing with these guys in Germany, and there was a new band coming out, and it was going to be called Mystic Prophecy. So I kind of like was there at the start of all these projects.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, like, we went from demo stages and discussions to getting record deals, and all that stuff happened at the same time, the same year.
Yeah.
So 2002, I'm kind of like launching 3 bands at the same time, you know,
and that was the third band, Night Rage.
4th band, Night Rage was the 4th band. So I had Firewind, Dream Evil, Mystic Prophecy, and Night Rage, which was more like I was helping my friend Marius to kind of like get back on his feet and make his thing, make his own band. And we had like, and because of the connection with the studio in Sweden, because he used to record there with his previous band, because of that connection, Frederick gave us some studio time at nights, and we recorded the first album. And then we, you know, the band got picked up by Century Media Records again, like I think the following year. So there was like at some point like 4 bands at the same time.
Yeah. How did you manage that?
I mean, you know, in the early days, it was like there was not any demands for shows, just, you know, like right off the bat. So I knew I could keep making records for a little bit, but if touring obligations would start becoming more, then I would have to make a choice eventually. So I did as much touring as I could with all of the bands, until, you know, at some point I had to make a decision. I think that was around 2005. I got a call actually from Arch Enemy to go out and do Ozfest.
Yeah, I read that.
Yeah, and that was like a big wake-up call. I was like, okay, now I should probably I would, and I loved Arch Enemy. I said, I want to join this bigger band and do this. I want to go to Ozfest, you know, and tour with Black Sabbath and do that. So I wanted to live that opportunity, but that made me realize, okay, you cannot be in 18 bands all at the same time. Like, you have to kind of like prioritize. So I was, you know, I was also very young. So I was, you know, I started trying to think a little bit down the road. And actually Arch Enemy was a big school for me in the sense that, you know, I saw how focused they were and how hardworking they were for their band. And, you know, that was my first experience for, you know, with being in a band that had a proper crew, big management, like everything, you know. So that was like my first experience with that. And I was like, okay, this is like, they run a professional organization here. And that inspired me to try and bring that into my own band, or try to reach some kind of level where things are more professional.
Yeah.
And I kind of realized that, okay, that means that probably I have to kind of choose what I'm going to do here. I can't just keep going playing with 4 or 5 bands. It's impossible.
Yeah.
And so I made my choice to continue with Firewind at the end of 2005. Yeah.
So gosh, there's so much I want to ask about that. Let me ask it first, as I was looking through the material, listening to the material, and going over some of your past with some of these other bands, they obviously they all had their own sound, but beyond just having their own sound, there seemed like there was a general genre approach that was unique. And you keep me honest on this, but to my ear and what I kind of reviewed, you had Night Rage, which was kind of a melodic death metal band. You had Dream Evil, which was more just of a straight heavy metal band, and Mystic Prophecy, which tended to be more of a power metal band. I know that categorizations are dangerous things, but in general, is that a fair way to characterize the music with those groups?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Yeah.
And the only reason I ask is because, and this evidences itself for me in some of your solo work that we're going to talk about later. But you have this facility, and maybe it came as a consequence of you deciding to go, you know, build your songwriting chops, working with lots of projects. But the music that you're writing with these different groups sounds authentically of the genre. And I this is not me trying to throw shade on anybody, but there's a difference between being able to sort of inhabit the mind space and the musical space of a genre and do that in an authentic way versus emulating it, which usually somehow just feels like you know, a performance of it, if you can understand what I'm saying. And
Yeah.
I feel like one of the, like it's one of my compliments to you is when I hear you play, it feels like a guy who has kind of built into his DNA an authentic way to deliver these different genres of metal. And by the way, you later start to combine them, which is really cool.
Yeah. I guess I didn't put as much thought into it as you kind of described now. It's a little bit it can be it can be a little bit confusing if you start thinking about all these tags on your music.
Yeah.
But I mean, let's just say, like you say, heavy metal, that type of heavy metal was definitely in my DNA. Growing up, the stuff that I liked, the stuff that I wanted to play was pretty obvious what I was going to do.
Yeah.
You know, developing a personal style, I think that's something that happens over time. You don't, I mean, if I listen to recordings of myself back when I was 20, 22, I can hear that I had, you know, parts of what later became my own style.
Yeah.
So there's something like if you know, artistically, if you have something to say, I think that kind of shows in the beginning, like in the early days as well. But that's something that you have to kind of develop, you know, and that happens over time and over writing more songs, making more records, and you eventually get to a point. So
that makes
you know,
sense.
all those bands, you know, they were a little bit different, but at the same time they were within the same realm. I don't know how to explain that, but you know, it comes from traditional heavy metal, hard rock, melodic.
Yeah.
Like all those elements existed in all those bands, but you know, you have different players, different voices, different singers. It is going to sound different. You know, they are going to separate themselves from. Yeah.
So it'd be fair to say that in those groups, there was never any intention to land, you know, in a certain category that people could identify. It was just to make the music you guys wanted to make, however that sort of came out. But it was all going to be heavy metal.
I think with Dream Evil, there was already a concept behind it. You know, it was a little bit more of a comedy approach to it. You know, it was a band that we wanted to have a little bit more of a funny lyrics, so to speak, which back then I remember I was really against about it, because you know, when you're 22, you want to rule the world and you know, be a metal god, and you don't take no shit from nobody. So you know, when we were making those songs about, you know, killing dragons and stuff, it was kind of, you know, like the other guys that were older than me. I was a young guy in the band, so they thought it was funny, and I didn't find it funny. But you know, people loved it. You know, the music was serious. You know, the music was serious. I was always dead serious about my music. So yeah. I guess you know, as you grow older, another thing is also you learn how to lighten up. You know, at least I have. You know, I don't take myself so seriously, not anymore, at least. You know.
Yeah. Well, you know, we're going to talk about your most recent single that I saw, where you didn't. It's not a typical performance, and it's actually kind of comical, right? The music's killer. Like, you're clearly serious about putting out a killer song, but you did something that was more whimsical.
Right. Yeah. That last video is the proof of what I just said. That you know, it's you have to you have to poke some fun at yourself as well. Eventually, you know, it's but at the same time, that kind of video, it shows I don't know. I shouldn't say it's not serious, but it also, you know, I mean, I don't know. Can I talk about it now? Or
yeah, let's do it. Let's get into it.
I mean, it's about that song called Fierce, and you know, I got myself into all this black metal, corpse paint, makeup thing, and you know, there were some people that were saying, "Oh, you're making fun of black metal." I'm like, no, I'm not making fun of that, actually. As a matter of fact, I like some of the aesthetics and some of the bands and all that stuff. So, but you know, the reason why I chose to go with full makeup on and, you know, basically portray a lonely heavy metal dude who, you know, gets up in the morning, brushes his teeth, whatever, eats breakfast, eats cereal. He's there with his pajamas and, you know, pets his cat. But, you know, because often metalheads are, you know, we are considered the outsiders of society, so to speak. Of, you know, we're just different than everybody else. So that's why I chose to have that makeup on, and you know, eventually that guy finds true love in this girl that he kept hostage before in his dungeon, and they form a band, which I don't know, kind of a crazy concept. I guess that's the quarantine effect.
You know, but there's layers, even if they're unintentional, there's layers that video works on that's really cool. You know, the fact, not only I think is it an homage to black metal and to the fandom there, and the, you know, the trappings with the corpse paint and whatnot, by using that, you create sort of a typification. Like it's no longer just looking at Gus G doing it. You can kind of see yourself in it. And so this person who's going through this, you know, some isolation and some loneliness, and all that means, but having this sort of undercurrent of wanting to do something meaningful and achieving, like, but, you know, you can read deeper into it if you choose to. It's also super fun. It's also super fun.
Correct.
But you can look at it on other levels, I found. So it's, I mean, kudos to you. I think it may have come out of a crazy idea from COVID, but I actually think that I'm glad you explored a different approach to the video you do. It's really cool.
Yeah. Actually, it was these two parallels. You can look at it as a funny thing, you know, that I'm sitting there in corpse paint in my bathrobe and I'm eating cereal. And you can look at it that way, which is funny, man. It's just funny, like, or, you know, you can look at that as like you said, you know, from a what's the words, socio-political or sociological approach. So
for sure. Yeah, it's fun. We'll put a link to it in the show notes, so if people haven't seen it, they can go watch it.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
It's really cool. But before we continue on with the most recent stuff, let's go back further in your career, if it's okay. So you talked about your time with Arch Enemy and some of your takeaways there. Did that invitation come because you'd started to sort of build a reputation as a guitar player? How did they know about you?
I want to think so. I mean, I had met Michael Amott at the studio in Sweden that I used to be there with Fredrik when we had Dream Evil, because Fredrik was also producing Arch Enemy, or he was recording them. At least he did a few albums of theirs. And I've met Michael there once, and but I guess at some point, you know, I was already starting to make a little bit of a reputation. You know, my bands were already kind of having some success in Japan and in certain countries, and things were starting to pick up. And I think eventually, you know how it is, like when there's a kind of like when there's a new kid in town, you kind of like, oh, who's that guy, and who's that new band? Sounds cool. And I think Michael liked Dream Evil. I think he did, and he liked my playing, and he just reached out to me one day. And
you played on a track too, on the Doomsday Machine.
Yeah, it was right. You know, they were mixing the record, and he was like, dude, you know, want to do a solo since we're gonna go on tour and stuff. And it was already decided that we have this spot for you to do a solo, and it was on the opening track of the record, and it was great. It's a great record. It's a great track, and I'm honored that, you know, that I got to play on it a little bit.
Yeah. For folks who are listening, the track's called "Taking Back My Soul," so you can go spin that up and hear Gus do his thing on an Arch Enemy tune. So then let's talk about Ozzy. So I'm sure you've talked about this story more than once. Where you got this invitation and you did the audition and you got a call back. A couple of questions I had for you on that. Is the sort of creative process with Ozzy, they already have a song in mind and they just really want you to put your imprint on it? How did that work for you with Ozzy?
Well, originally we were just doing a couple of gigs just to feel things out, and then after the second show, he's like, come over to my house and I'll play you some of the new stuff that I'm working on. And I was like, yeah, man, great. So I'm sitting there in Ozzy's fucking basement, which is, in his amazing studio in his basement. He's playing me like new songs. And I'm like, wow. So,
kind of a dream come true.
Yeah. I was like, wow, can I just be a fly on the wall here? But the thing is, he's like, why don't you stay here for a few days and just put some solos to these things? And because they had no solos, it was the songs that him and Kevin Churko, the producer, primarily wrote and co-wrote with Ozzy. And Kevin played a little bit of guitar, but it was missing that kind of stamp on that you hear on Ozzy records. The guitar, basically. The way the riffs should be played and the little fills, and there was definitely no solos or melodies or anything on there. So I stayed there for 5 or 6 days. I did a bunch of solos, and then I went back to Greece, and then I heard nothing for a while. And then eventually, they reached out to me and they said, "Hey, sorry, we just threw you in the deep like that, and terribly sorry about that. Would you come back and like redo everything? And we want you to play on the record." And I guess they were just testing it out, just to see if they liked what I did and all that. And next thing I know, I was just there and like, take all the time you want. So I would go there in the mornings and record in his studio with Kevin Churko. And, the songs were there. To answer the question, basically, the songs were there. The only thing I probably came up was just like an acoustic intro in one of the songs, I think Digging Me Down.
Yeah.
And that's about it really. And the rest, but I added all the solo parts.
Yeah, man.
And I redid all the rhythms. I kind of adapted it to my own style.
Yeah.
Try to make it as much as into something the way that I would play it, even though I didn't write it, which was a difficult task for me, and also coming from a different world of being in my own band and all of a sudden, like, being hired to play on this record and from a major artist, so it was a lot of pressure, of course, but it was a wonderful experience at the same time.
Yeah. I should say for folks who may be less aware, it's doing what Gus just described in sort of walking this line between respecting what's there and trying to play it in a way that seems natural to your style, to not even speak of the solos that you wrote and played. That's an art, and it's a meaningful contribution to a record, even if there's already a lot of the foundation there. So it's
thanks.
I don't say that just to because you're on the show and we're having that. I've known so many musicians who get called into studio situations to do that, and it's the difference between an okay track and a great track when you get a musician that can do that. And I think it's an acknowledgement of your playing that they both invited you, immediately threw you in the deep end, and then wanted you back. To say nothing of the fact that then you got to go and do tours and stuff, which must have been just a crazy like dream fulfillment.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was all the stuff you can ever kind of, think of or whatever you've seen in the movies and thought it was like, it was like that, without the debauchery and all the wild moments, because all we did was drink tea on that tour.
Oh no, you've shattered the myth.
Yeah, man. No cocaine on that tour. No, nothing. No drugs, no booze.
All
just
tea.
Just tea and warm-up exercises. I mean, the rock and roll on stage was real. That was, that was living the myth, the stuff that you see on all the classic Ozzy videos and live shows and stuff. That was the real deal.
Yeah, it certainly, and it, as it should, and I think in an earned way, it definitely helped raise your profile.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I'm there's an old saying that you're an overnight success that took 10, 20 years. So it's from you as the 10-year-old with the acoustic guitar to forming your first bands, to starting to build a reputation. Then you start to get calls from bands that have a higher profile. Like all that journey is all something that you earned. And had developed the talent to get the call in the first place. So Ozzy's Ozzy, and he's a brand name and all of that, but he has wonderful talent that help him realize his dream, and you're part of that. That's how I look at it.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, and sure, I played on a record that might not be his most classic or anything, but it's for me, like I'm still very proud that I got to be on that record, and
yeah, man,
it was a historical moment for me anyway. So it's just to put my stamp on it, even for that part that I was allowed to, it means a lot to me. Yeah. So
well, and just a couple of sparklers. That record may not have Crazy Train on it, but it the song "Let Me Hear You Scream" hit number 6 on the American rock songs. Number 1 on the U.S. mainstream rock tracks, hit number 1. Life Won't Wait reached number 1 on the media base rock charts in Canada. It was featured in films. It was featured in television.
It did
programs.
well. It was not a flop record. It was a successful record.
Very successful record. So
yes,
it's so you are right. Some people may not consider it a classic Ozzy record, but it remains among his most successful in terms of chart positions and media tie-in stuff. So
correct.
You're part of that, man. Okay, let's talk about Firewind. This was something I didn't know when I was kind of reading about you, that a huge influence on you was Uli John Roth.
Yeah. And I got the band name from out of one of his albums.
Yeah, I read that. And you said some very kind things about him. Not to suggest that they're not true, but that in your mind, he's a catalyst for so many of the sort of 80s shredders.
I think so.
Influence.
I think so. Yeah, he has influenced. So he's like the kind of like the godfather of shred. He has influenced so many guys. A lot of the guys that came out in the 80s, from the Mike Varney school, Shrapnel Records, like a lot of those guys. I mean, you can hear Uli's influence over them, and Yngwie, of course,
Sure.
But what Uli was doing, it was like in early 70s with the Scorpions, and he was kind of like introducing all those exotic scales and like big epic solos, and incorporating even some more, classical stuff in there. So I think Uli's is he's definitely one of the first guys. I mean, Yngwie perfected it, but I think Uli kind of gave this kind of like started the engine, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree with you actually. And so with Firewind, which was the band that you kind of wanted to found, you had other meaningful bands that you were part of, founding and getting rolling, but you came back to Firewind. And we'll talk about your solo work in a minute, but Firewind has been, it's arguably where you've spent your most creative time as a guitar player. Is that a fair statement?
It is. Yeah. It's like, I guess, it's, you can say it's like my kid, so
yeah.
So, I've had that band since I was 18, or the vision of the band. And I mean, next year it's 20 years since we've been active in discography. So it's pretty amazing that, and and it's a band that's been through a lot. It hasn't been very easy for us, actually. Like you said, we got sidetracked many times because I either got called to do bigger gigs or stuff I just couldn't turn down, or members leaving, and we definitely had a few of those, and so it hasn't always been great, but yeah, somehow we always keep coming back, and I still have a desire to keep doing the band, and it's kind of hard to explain, but it's I keep going back to it.
Well, you've got and you can correct me here if I'm wrong, but you've got 10 studio albums and a live album.
I think it's 9.
Is it 9?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're probably thinking of some live album as well. I mean, studio albums, right?
Yeah. So you say you've got 9 studio albums.
Yeah, I think so. 3, 4, 5.
I better go back to school.
Yeah, it's 9 albums for sure. Or no, or is it 10?
It's
Come
10,
on.
dude. Between Heaven and Hell, Burning Earth, Forged by Fire, Allegiance, The Premonition, Live Premonition. Is that
No, that's a live album.
that okay? Take that off. So you're right. So then
Yeah.
Days of Defiance, You Against Many, Immortals, and Firewind.
Yes.
I shouldn't argue with the artist about how many records he's made. How dumb of me.
Because you got me thinking there, because I mean, it's a lot of albums. So I'm
It's a
thinking,
lot, yeah.
well, maybe I haven't counted right either. So
No, so stupid. But you've got a second live record, Apotheosis.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, so you've got 2 live.
But I don't count live albums. I mean, they are in
Yeah,
part
yeah.
of the discography, but not as studio albums, so to speak. You know, it doesn't contain new music. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. With the most recent record, which came out last year, you described it in some places as kind of a reboot for the band, which there's a couple of things that seem to be part of that. There's the departure of a keyboard player, so keys aren't really as instrumental to the music. Tons of variants. Was that a conscious thought? Hey, let's kind of go back to our roots or maybe roots is the wrong term, or did the nature of all the other changes just kind of bring you back to that place?
It was actually a decision that I made after a lot of thinking, because I had already written the songs and we were touring until the end of 2019, and we had already tracked the drums, and then we went back on tour. And during the last couple of tours, I realized the band was kind of falling apart, even though there was a new album in the making, and things weren't right. So I came home from tour, and it was one of those things where we had these discussions, and a couple of the guys were not happy, and I was not happy. So I started thinking, well, maybe this is it. Maybe that's it, because I was always thinking, well, I can't really start over again. It's been too many times, and get another singer again and all that. So it was, for a moment there, I thought about quitting, just kind of like putting it to rest. And I already have a solo career. I'm like, oh, maybe I should just keep on doing solo records or whatever, or maybe start a new band. I don't know. But then, I was thinking, well, I already worked on these new songs, and I really believed in them. And I thought it was a good record. So I thought, maybe let's do this record and see what happens. And then from going on from there, it kind of gave me the energy and the motivation to, how would I relaunch the band if I had a second chance?
Yeah.
Because we started out as a 4-piece, but then we became a 5-piece on the 3rd record, and have been ever since. And I was like, well, it was my decision to kind of like have more keyboards in the band. And then I was like, well, I got to a point where I didn't want as much keyboards anymore. So maybe this is a chance to kind of eliminate that part of the sound. Not 100%, but, just kind of like take it down and go back to being a more guitar-driven band like we used to be. So that's why I call this a reboot, a restart, kind of like, if somebody would have given me a second chance to reintroduce the band, how would it sound? What would it be? And that's what I feel this record represents. Yeah.
One of the things you did, it's a great record.
Thanks.
And one of the things that you did on there is there's sort of a mini concept, a narrative thing you do with 3 tracks. I think it's Longing to Know You, Space Cowboy, and Orbital Sunrise.
Orbital Sunrise, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because that's a weird title, because I was Herbie, the new singer, he wrote that, and I said, is that a word? He said, yeah, it's a word. But I'm like, well, he's German. Maybe he thinks it's a word, but it's not. But you're American. Maybe you should know that.
I struggled with it because it's not one I use.
Yeah, I know orbital. I know what that is, but I don't know, orbital. Well, maybe we made our own word there. I don't know.
But it's the reason I call attention to it is I love music that's got
any sort of narrative component to it. Did you do any of the lyrics or all the lyrics on these songs?
On these 3 songs that you mentioned,
Yeah,
the
this
concept.
is
No,
sort of
I didn't.
concept.
No, I think Herbie did all of them. Or maybe on Orbital Sunrise, I co-wrote a little bit, or I helped a little bit, but I think it's mainly Herbie's story, Herbie's idea. Yeah.
My question is, how did I think that you did a really good job with this? And you know, I love concept albums anytime there's an effort to try and create a narrative link. How did you guys approach musically marrying this sci-fi concept and the lyrics and the music? Was there anything you did to try and have those things synergize in some way?
Actually, on this time around, no, because I already had the music without really knowing what the lyrics would be about.
Okay.
But, you know, we were discussing ideas with Herbie, and I said, well, this is the stuff that I like, and maybe this and this and that. And he was telling me what he likes. And I threw out the idea, well, it's kind of late now to start making a concept album, because the previous album, Immortals, that was a concept album. Yeah. And the music fit the lyrics. It was more epic character and definitely more of a power metal record. And it was about, you know, ancient Greek battles, you know, 300 and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But this time was kind of like, I said, well, now it's kind of late to make a concept record, but what about, and I'm into sci-fi movies, and I love, you know, stuff like Blade Runner and all that stuff. Nice. Yeah. So like, well, maybe we should do something like that. And then Herbie, I guess, kind of took that away, and he thought about it and came back with that story about this astronaut that goes on this, you know, astro trip or whatever, like to outer space. And, you know, he looks at there's one song where he's looking down at the earth and he sees all the bad things that are happening and kind of wondering, and, you know,
yeah.
And that's Orbital Sunrise. And then the other one is, you know, he's waiting for his son, newborn son, and he's gonna meet him when he goes back to Earth. And then, you know, the song Space Cowboy is about just him feeling cool up there in space and in his spaceship. And
yeah, it's a viable approach if you've got a smart lyricist and a good concept to be able to sort of take the music and fashion the story to it. It's I think it can be more challenging, but I think that in some ways that makes this more impressive, that you kind of went back to these with a concept.
It's definitely doable. You can do it. I mean, even though if the music is not written around that, you can do it. And
yeah, for sure.
I'll tell you what, we found out that, you know, when you have a concept in mind, it kind of unfolds itself. It's easier to write when you have a concept, rather than not having any concept. For example, when we first did Immortals, the previous record, I was like, because that was a conscious decision. We're gonna make a concept album, the first one ever, you know. So, and I was like, oh my God, how are we gonna do this? But it was actually easier to do that than just get 10 great songs together that have no link between them whatsoever, and then somehow put them in a record and have it make sense.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you. I think if you have that up front, you know, and you know some of the narrative motion, that'll suggest to you, you know, dynamics in songs and all kinds of things. I think the compliment I would pay you on this little suite here is that, having already had the music, finding a story that you could superimpose on it and have it sort of, you know, make sense and sort of work with the music, that's very artful. So
no, thank you.
Kudos for that. And I'll go spend more time with Immortals because I love concept records. So
yeah, check that one out. That one is about, you know, the famous battles in Thermopylae and the Battle of Salamis, and you know, there's been cool movies made about that. Obviously, you know, the movie 300, you know, with King Leonidas and his brave 300 Spartans. So we made songs about that, and it was
I'm excited to do that. When I came to Greece, I took some of those tours to go visit, like the Oracle at Delphi and some of those other.
Oh, cool! You did
places.
That. All right.
Oh yeah, man. I went to I can't remember the name now, but I went to one of the amphitheaters, and they let us stand right at the center and just whisper, and the acoustics are so perfect you could hear the whisper in the whole place. You're outside.
Oh, wow.
Like the engineering is really amazing. So I'm very fond of the history there. So that's exciting.
Wow.
I'm gonna go spin that up this afternoon.
Cool.
That's really cool. Let's transition and talk about your solo work. My first question here is, how do you think about you are such the sort of creative center for Firewind. How do you think about the difference with your solo music?
Originally, the reason why I made a solo record was to just branch out of Firewind and just write with other people and do collaborations. And that's what the first 2 solo records were, just collaborations with different people. And I was trying to do more kind of commercial rock songs, you know, kind of geared towards active rock, radio. And we didn't, I didn't have any success with it, obviously, because I'm such a metalhead and there were too many solos over it. But but it doesn't matter, I got to write with different people, different producers and songwriters, and just try to do something else after doing Firewind for so long,
And that first record, I Am the Fire, and for folks who haven't heard it, it's got folks like Matt Levins, Jeff Scott Soto, Michael Starr, Alexia Rodriguez. I mean, like, that's some killer lineup on that record.
Yeah, a lot of really good people on it, man. I'm really grateful these people wanted to collaborate with me and do that. And the second record is kind of like a continuation of the first one, Brand New Revolution. It was actually a lot of the songs that were meant to be on the first one. The first one could have been a double album, but the label said, okay, let's stop here. We have enough songs. So, a year later, we put out the second record. It was basically a lot of extra songs that didn't make it on the first album, and then I made some new ones.
Yeah.
And then, when I started making those, I was wondering, if I could do any tours behind that. And once I started playing live shows as a solo artist, then the whole vibe changed in the sense that, I said, now I kind of need a solo band. Not necessarily, a standard band, it could be different friends coming and going and helping me out for tours, but it's developing into this thing. It's its own thing. And so then I made their third record, which is called Fearless. And I went into a power trio kind of thing, even though we didn't record as a power trio, but that was what we're trying to convey to the live show. So I started working with my co-producer, Dennis Ward, who plays bass and sings great, and he co-writes the stuff with me. So it was just me and Dennis and a drummer. That's how we went out and started touring. That happened from 2018 and on. So
by the way, a happy 6th anniversary on Brand New Revolution was just a couple of days ago.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, time flies. But the solo stuff is really good, and that would bring us to the forthcoming record, which doesn't have a name yet, right? Or at least not a name that's public.
Yeah. No, it's not public yet, and we're probably gonna launch the pre-sales and make the announcement in the coming weeks, within August, I would say. But then the new record is also something totally different. It's my first full instrumental album. I never done that before. I mean, I've had instrumental songs, within the album track list here and there, but this is like I guess this is like the Gus G solo album that everybody would sort of expect, that it would be an instrumental record. Yeah.
Well, I've obviously haven't heard the whole thing, but I've heard the first couple of tracks, and the first thing that strikes me is the diversity. And I don't know if that'll be a theme, but like when I listen to Exosphere, that's got these really lush layered guitar parts. It's got some progressive shadings, like a Satriani, like it's just this gorgeous guitar track that's not centrally like heavy metal the way you think about heavy metal. It's more in like that virtuoso guitar, fusion, shadings. And I can't remember hearing you play a song like that.
Yeah, I mean, the song Exosphere is very different from what I've done in that sense. It's not just a heavy metal track. I mean, Fierce, the second single, is,
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
pedal to the metal. That's the one, you know. So
Yeah.
But you know, the Exosphere is different. You know, it's more experimental. You know, maybe a bit more different rhythms, different kind of syncopations, using a 7-string guitar.
Yeah.
Utilizing layers of guitars. And I guess that's what makes instrumental music so interesting and beautiful. You can add different layers of sounds and things and just create something different, you know, and let the guitar be the voice.
I have to tell you, I think it's really cool. Not that this isn't something you could have done before, but it expresses a side of your guitar playing that I think we just don't see all the time. So I think it's really cool. This track is amazing. And it's easy to see. You can go to Gus's. I mean, it's on YouTube, but I found it on your website.
Oh.
And then of course there is that next song we've talked about, Fierce, which is, you know, black metal, and just crunchy and awesome.
Yeah, it has this kind of thrashy moments in there, and it's just it's like 100% heavy metal song. You know, it's something you would hear from, like, you can put extreme vocals on it, growling vocals, and it can be a great death metal song or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And then you can put somebody who sings melodic, and it can be almost like a Firewind song. And,
yeah.
But it's definitely 100% heavy metal track, that one. There's no left or right there. It's just heavy metal.
Yeah. Well, and so the larger point then is, will we hear on the balance of the album, will we hear more sort of I guess variants? Were you trying different kinds of approaches?
Yeah, there's different stuff in there. Yeah, there's some more hard rock stuff, you know, drawing influences from, you know, guys like Satriani and stuff like that. But there's a song that's a little bit more proggy. Then there's a song that I made that it's like synth wave.
Oh yeah,
you know, with drum machines and synths, like you know, similar to, you know, Stranger Things, that kind of a thing. And then you hear like, my playing is still the same, you know, like I still play the same style of guitar that I play, but just different vibes, you know. And then there's, like, you know, some straightforward metal tracks. There are some shredding stuff, you know, straight out of the 80s. And so it's I like the record. I'm proud of it. So I mean, I made it last year. By the time it gets released, I will feel it's like an old record.
Well, is there a release date yet?
Yeah, it's in October. It should be out in October. So that's why I'm thinking we should probably, I think we're getting ready to launch the pre-sales and make the announcement and stuff. Like, all artwork, everything is ready. So we have everything done.
It's a, you know, as we're talking, it's kind of a really cool statement about your growth as a musician that, you know, and I like doing this with artists to kind of track forward. We've seen you all filtered through your experience and your own, you know, technique and how you play, but you have been in and out of various different kind of groups and styles, establishing your own, and you know, now the most recent thing you've done has got you experimenting on all these different approaches. And they're not, I don't use the word experiment as a way of saying see if it's good. It's like these songs arrive great. You know, you're not just figuring something out. It's just that you're employing some techniques that you know, you're not as always heard or associated with, or have made a signature out of. And that's exciting to me. And I try and share that enthusiasm with others, that we don't pigeonhole the artists that we love to only wanting to hear the same thing all the time.
Yeah, man, and I'm with you on that. And I feel the same thing whenever I go in the studio to make a record, or whenever I write songs. I always like try to push the envelope a little bit, like what is it? What could I do this time? Even if it's just one small thing that I haven't done ever before. It doesn't have to be a life-changing thing and completely, you know, change my playing style or anything. But what can I add to the palette of colors that I already have and stuff that I know? What can I add to this whole thing that I've been doing for 20 years? You know, what will it make it exciting for me first and foremost, and hopefully for the listeners that are gonna go, hey, he hasn't done that before. That's something cool. You know, he didn't just copy his previous records or something, because That's the most boring thing ever.
Yeah, that's it's this interesting duality or dichotomy that artists and who have success the way you have get presented with, which is you have so many fans who just would love to just hear you keep shredding for 2 hours. But you as an artist need to feel some freshness in things you do, at least sometimes. And so you want your fandom to appreciate you as an artist and all the ways you want to sort of express music. And sometimes there's some tension there. So I'm really like, I've loved everything that I've got. I knew Firewind and I knew some of the stuff you'd done. I got to know it so much better listening to it. And so I'm encouraging everybody to go deeper into your catalog, because there's so many records that you've either done yourself or that you've collaborated on, all the way up to and including this new one, which I think is it's a really good next sort of message or step in, your own musical evolution. And I love it, man. I really love it.
Thank you. Thanks, Peter. Appreciate it. Yeah, that's what I was going for. I'm like, I wanted to go to the next step, basically, instead of just doing one more record like the previous one. So I don't know what the next step after this will be, but it's like there's time enough for that. But for now, this was an important step for me to just go out there and kind of carry the whole record, like just with my guitar, so to speak, without having a voice behind it, and then keep it interesting for 40 or 45 minutes. It's I learned a lot from it. Believe me, I learned a lot from it, because it was a scary thing making an instrumental guitar record, especially nowadays when everything has been played and done so many times. Yeah. And so many, you have the legends already, your Satrianis and Vides and Ingves, and then you have like so much new talent emerging to the scene and taking it to new heights, new levels. So I'm like, well, what can I bring to this? But it was a good experience. I'm glad I did it.
Yeah, I'm glad you did it too. And I've only just heard the 2 tracks, so I'm eager to hear the rest. Will there be more singles ahead of the drop date?
Oh yeah. Okay. There's another one coming in a couple of weeks from now, I would say.
Cool.
And it's an interesting album.
Yeah, man.
I think you'll dig it.
I can't wait. I'm gonna be there soon, and I'll be watching your website and stuff for announcements on the on the singles. The last thing we should talk about a little bit is gear. So you've, by virtue of your own sort of playing ability, you've been endorsed a number of times. There was ESP for a while. Currently, though, in the guitar world, it's Jackson. Yeah.
Yes, Jackson. Yes, since the last 5 years. Yeah.
I guess my question there for folks who I'm interested, and I know others are interested, is what's the process whereby a guitar becomes a signature Gus G guitar? Is there certain sort of you create a set of requirements, things that you want the guitar to be able to do in order to make it to carry your name?
Yeah, I mean, you're involved in the making of the guitar, in the designing process, like the specs. Yeah. Like I get to choose what kind of wood I want on the guitar. What kind of wood should the neck be, or the profile of the neck. It should fit my style and my it has to feel comfortable for me first and foremost. The hardware, the pickups, like everything. So I'm involved in all of those things. And we decide together with the team at Jackson, and they make prototypes. They send them over, and I spend some time with the guitars, and then we go back and forth for a little bit until we get it right. And then once we are like okay, that guitar is a go, then from there on we go into production.
Okay. And so currently you've got a signature guitar with Jackson, but that's not your only endorsement.
Well, I have a couple of guitars with them. I have, the Star guitars, and So those weird kind of shapes that you see back there.
You can see them behind you.
That I've been playing forever. And then I have like a San Dimas guitar, which is this kind of Strat looking like guitar. You see that red in the middle?
Yeah, I do.
So that's the latest model, and and I have other endorsements, and I also started a pickup company.
That's what I want to talk about. Yeah, tell us. That's Black Fire.
Black Fire, yeah, in proper Firewind tradition. So, and everything has to be with fire. But it's Black Fire because I got inspired from my I had an amp with Blackstar a few years ago, and we called it the Blackfire model.
Oh.
So I was like, okay, well, that's kind of already of a brand that we did and a name that we kind of put out there. So, you know, I asked the guys at Blackstar if they were cool with me to name my company like that. And they were like, yeah, sure.
So tell us about these pickups.
Well, it was a little bit of a thing that I started out of necessity. You know, I used to be with Seymour Duncan, and I had a signature pickup for about 10 years. And I loved the pickup, but, you know, I wanted to do more things. I wanted to tweak the pickups. I wanted to come up with new versions. I wanted to do other pickups. And, you know, when you're kind of, especially with the pickups, when you're in a deal like that, it's a little bit limiting. You know, I can't just go to a big company like that and ask them for a new pickup every year or every 2 years. With the guitars, it's different. You know, you can launch a model and then that have its own lifespan, and then you can make some changes to it because there's new guitars coming out all the time. With the pickups, it's a bit different. So I thought, well, you know what? I'll just do it myself. So my good friend Rob Chapman put me in touch with a factory in Asia because he owns Chapman guitars, and he put me in touch with his people, and yeah, they started making me prototypes. So I decided, you know what, I'll go into production. I'll choose the pickups that I like, and I'll put them on my own signature models, and that's what we did. You know, the latest guitars have my own pickups on there.
That's cool.
And now we're finally launching them as a standalone product, so you can get the pickups, you know, separately from the guitars if you don't want or whatever, or you can't afford the guitars. You can get the pickups for whatever guitar you have. You can mount them on there.
Where do you find them? Is it on your website? If you want them?
Yeah, you can find blackfirepickups.com.
Okay, we'll point people there too.
Yeah, because then we have, you know, you can find all the details there. You can buy directly from our website, and you know, if you buy directly from our website, the pickups, the box comes personally signed from me, and you know, we have dealers in the US and UK, so you can also buy directly from shops, you know, if you're in the US. So you know, it's a small venture. You know, it's a brand new venture. It's a pretty small company right now, like really small. It's basically like a one-man operation. You know, like I do it, and I have a couple of people helping me out, and just like I said, man, just out of necessity, but I'm very happy with it. You know, hopefully it'll grow, and if it doesn't, at least, you know, I get to do what I like.
Oh, so, we lost your video feed.
Yeah, I have a very low battery, so it's gonna die soon.
Well, we're almost done. We'll point people to your pickups. That's really exciting. I hope it grows for you. I know other musicians who've started things. I talked to Casey Grillo not long ago. He started a drumhead company.
Yes, he's been doing it for years. Yeah, and a lot of people are doing it. A lot of other musicians, you know, like I mean, you know, Zach Wilde started his own Wild Audio guitars a few years ago, and Tosin Abasi, you know, from Animals as Leaders, he does his own guitar company, and who else? Ola Englund, he's a famous YouTuber. Yeah. He owns Solar guitars, so it's not a taboo anymore so much to have your own, to be a musician and have your own kind of company, making your own things. And
no, I think I think it's really good. I mean, there's so many ways that the artist is done a disservice in participating in the money side of the industry, that finding these new ways to be able to do good things in music and also to be able to create additional revenue streams, I'm all for it, 100%.
Yeah, and actually there's more control over it as well. Like I right now, like I do exactly what I wanted to be doing, you know, with these pickups. It's a lot more work for me, and a lot, you know, it's a lot of pressure, but you know, the reward is bigger, because you know, when somebody buys that pickup and they're like, dude, that tone on that thing is killer, that makes me happiest guy in the world, man.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so real quickly then, I think I saw some touring coming up for Firewind.
Yeah, next year. Well, we're supposed to do a festival in Holland next month. I'm not sure if it's going to happen because, you know, COVID, and there's festivals are pretty much canceled everywhere in Europe this year. But we're going to attempt to go out next spring on our 20th anniversary tour. I'm going to start in Spain in March and then do rest of Europe in May. So
will you come to the States on that, do you think?
I'm not sure. That's the thing, because right now, as of today, like US doesn't let anybody in from Europe, and they don't grant working visas. So unless those things are lifted, those measures, and yeah, unless that changes, I don't think the tour will reach the States. But you never know, man. By end of 2022, I'm sure things will be different and regulations will be different. So let's see. I would love to bring this worldwide.
I hope so. I actually had a ticket to a show. You were it was Symphony X and you guys.
Yeah, Primal Fear.
And ticket, and COVID hit.
Yeah.
So it's my chance to see you live. So I'm hoping
that was a killer tour. I mean, that was a killer lineup. I wish that thing had happened, but it just happened right when COVID hit. So
yeah, bad timing. Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed that things kind of open up, so that you could look at bringing Firewind to the States next year. That would be awesome.
I would love to. Yeah.
Musically, then, I mean, you've got a new record about to come out. Have you already started thinking about a next record, whether it's solo or Firewind or something else?
Not really, to be honest. There's just so much stuff, you know. I'll probably do some reissues of the first couple of albums next year, because it's a debut album, 20th anniversary, and since we have the rights for that, I will probably do like a vinyl edition and stuff like that.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, but new record, I mean, I haven't really started writing for it. I have ideas, but not like properly writing. But eventually we will make another record with Firewind. Absolutely.
So very last question. Is there I call it a mountain you want to climb? It could be a creative endeavor that's non-musical. Maybe it's a painter or something else, or it could be completely non-musical, like becoming a carpenter. Like, is there something you want to do in your life when time permits?
No, not really. No,
not really. This is it.
I'm content with what I'm doing. Yeah. So I know this is going to be my life till the very end of my days. It's going to be music. Yeah. I'm pretty sure about that. One way or another, maybe won't be touring anymore, but creating music and maybe get more into manufacturing the instruments and things like that. I'm really into that. So yeah.
Cool. All right, man. Well, you've been very generous with your time. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Peter.
It was awesome getting to know you better. We're going to point people to your website, the Gus G website. Is that a best portal, or is there some other places that we should point them?
No, I'm all over, all the social media channels, the same, like if on Instagrams and Facebook and stuff, it's Gus G Official, and Twitter, and the website is gusgofficial.com, and for Firewind it's firewind.gr, and it's pretty easy these days. You just type in the name and it'll come up. Yeah. We'll include
a link to both you and Firewind. I think you can get to all the rest of it from there.
Yeah.
And then I'll put a couple of notes on things that I think people should check out, since I've
and they can find me also on YouTube. I do regular videos there on YouTube. So
okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, dude. Well, you have a good evening. I'm gonna play the outro. If you'll stick on for 1 sec so I can say my goodbyes, and then we'll wrap it up.
Thank you very much. Have a good one. Thanks everybody for watching.